Hello again, this is the 12th of May 2021 and today I am going to be talking about autism and racism. I'm going to try not to sort of go off on a tangent about race in general because I think that is such a massive subject and something that I, as a clearly white British person, I'm not particularly qualified to talk about at length individually. As such, this will include a lot of experiences that are not my own, things that I have sort of read about in articles and contributions to Facebook groups and things that I am a member of. I think the first issue about autism and race is that there's a very big disparity between diagnosis rates, the diagnosis rates of white people and everybody else. Overwhelmingly, people diagnosed as autism worldwide are Caucasians. Why would that be? I think firstly, most of the research into autism has been on white people, by white people in Europe and America. Most of the published research is in English or German, other European languages. But why do black and brown people find it so difficult to actually get a diagnosis? Because I have, I did leave a message on one of my groups, on my Facebook group, saying, this is something that I'm interested in. Does anyone have any stories they can share or articles they want to link me to about the issues that people have as regarding racism when you're trying to get diagnosed. And there were a lot of black and Asian and Native American people all sharing stories from all over the internet about being disbelieved by medical professionals, and certainly as a woman, I have experienced sexism from doctors, which I won't go into. I don't think that's particularly relevant right now. But yeah, it is well known, that doctors sort of see women as being hysterical hypochondriacs a lot of the time. The sexism that exists in society also exists in the medical profession, in the same sort of proportions. Likewise, there are a lot of racist doctors around who kind of dismiss the problems of ethnic minority people as whatever they think ethnic minority people are, liars or work shy or confused by daily life. I don't know what racists think ethnic minorities are like. But yeah, it's they do tend to dismiss some quite obvious issues, and people are talking about things like I was being clearly in agony and bleeding, and being unable to stand up, and still just being waved away at A&E. I did read a study as well saying that doctors tend to underestimate the pain threshold of black people. They just sort of assume that something that would cause a lot of pain to a white person would not be particularly agonising to a black person, and yet there's so a lot of things like that don't seem to make a lot of sense. But when you actually talk to people about their experiences, you realise it's absolutely true. And there are some real horror stories about racist doctors just not giving people the attention they need. And of course, being part of any oppressed group so does mean that your access to medical attention in general, especially mental health care, is always going to be limited, because it's simply what oppression means. Sort of being undereducated and living in poverty and all underemployed, even unemployed, all these things that are sort of disproportionately associated with women and ethnic minorities and immigrants and the disabled and gay people and transgender people. They are just overwhelmingly I won't say barred from treatment, but certainly everything just makes everything 10 times harder. If you don't read particularly well, if you don't have access to medical literature, if you don't sort of understand what autism actually is, if you can't describe your symptoms accurately, if you have sort of other health problems that overlap and kind of sort of might be something else, these are all things that make it very difficult to actually go to a doctor and say, I would like an autism diagnosis, please. Also, just lack of self-confidence. That's a very big one that affects all minority groups hugely, and anxiety, depression. These things really discourage people. They are genuine problems that do reduce your chances of A, knowing what the issue actually is, B, going to the doctor, C, trusting the doctor, D, winning the trust of your doctor, and all those things are absolutely necessary if you are going to become an officially diagnosed autistic person. If you're going to get any support, that's another 10 hoops you've got to jump through. Certainly in America, and any country that does not have universal health care, living in poverty, or just being sort of less well off, not having the correct insurance, makes things difficult as well, even if not impossible. You've got to pay to go to your doctor and you've got no spare money after you've paid your bills and your rent and everything. You're not going to your doctor, are you? And of course, in America they have the legacy of the slave trade and apartheid and all that kind of thing still working very strongly in their society, as we have seen in the news. They still have a massive problem with very real racism in the police. There's still a hugely disproportionate number of black people being murdered by the police. And these things just happen seemingly as a matter of course. Yeah, this all makes it very difficult to get an autism diagnosis. To make it makes it maybe not a priority for people as well. They think they may be autistic, but they've got a mountain of debt and 101 problems, and it's maybe they're quite low on their list of priorities. I do think that it's interesting that originally, when autism was first identified, in the mid-20th century, it was seen as something that only happened to men or to boys. There's very little research into it, even in adulthood. It was seen as something that happened to little boys, and there were no girls diagnosed. Apparently, in the 90s, the figure was about 1 in 10 autistic people were female, and the most recent figure I could find, which I think was for 2019, was 1 in 3 were female. So how did we go from no women are autistic 50 years ago to about 1/10 of us are autistic about 30 years ago to 1 in 3, 1/3 of autistics are female nowadays? How could there just suddenly have been an explosion of autistic women? It's a genetic thing. Why would it not affect women in the past, but suddenly then the proportion of autistic women has just shot right up? Obviously, it's because of the way it's being diagnosed. It's got to be. It's got to be because of human error that is gradually being corrected. Certainly among people I happen to know, and I know it's not a scientific sampling method, but amongst people I happen to know who are self-diagnosed or suspect they maybe have some traits, probably a majority are female. But I can't really explain why that is either. But yeah, I'll get off the subject of females being diagnosed with autism, because it's not really. It's a comparison. Maybe it's not relevant as such. The other sort of autism racism thing we see is are autistic people racist? Obviously we are people. We come from a wide range of backgrounds. We have a wide range of beliefs. But are autistic people more or less inclined to be racist than allistic people? I did read an article which it certainly meant a lot to me and to a few other people I sent it to, who said, yeah, that sounds, it makes a lot of sense to me. I was saying, how autistic people don't understand the kind of social hierarchies, the sort of unspoken rules of dominance and status and things that are apparently very important to allistic people. We just, if we notice them at all, we dismiss them as being fairly unimportant. We tend to see people much more as equals. We often really struggle with the idea of authority. And that in turn makes us less likely to be racist, well, to be prejudiced against anybody, really. But I was discussing this on one of my Facebook groups, and someone says that's not my experience at all. In fact, I've actually left several groups because there's just so much racism. It just makes me sick. I can't stand to be around it. I thought that's contrary to what I've just read. And quite a few people were saying things like this. I mean, there was one group I saw that actually called itself Autism without Racism, or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly. And this puzzled me, so I started. I did sort of look into it. I read a few articles, and apparently, you can go the other way, and I suppose it kind of makes sense that, also there is the trait of sort of being suspicious of things that are new and different and unexpected, and maybe if you haven't met a lot of people of one race or another, you might sort of see them as being something that's a bit new and different and scary, perhaps. I think also my own theory is that we do sort of exist at extremes. We have extremes of personality and interest and likes and dislikes. Maybe that's a political thing as well. I mean, I personally myself seem to know a lot of autistic people who are kind of far left activists, but then being an autistic far left activist myself, I'm probably sort of more inclined to mix with people like that. And there's another sort of whole population that I'm kind of unaware of. And you can imagine as well, traits such as special interest can lead you in either direction. If you happen to start reading a lot about, say, eugenics, or about theories such as apartheid, even. If you for whatever reason really want to read defences of apartheid, you could sort of end up believing in these things. I don't know. That's we are all people. We are all individuals with our own beliefs and our own backgrounds and our own interests. And these things are not necessarily affected by neurotype. I do wonder, obviously, sort of racial, national, regional stereotypes are a bad thing generally. They don't really do anybody any good. They're inaccurate at best. And used as excuses for genocide at worst. But could they in part be based on the amount of neurodiversity in society? I mean, I know there's a lot of it is to do with kind of history and politics and culture and religion and just made up stories, sometimes completely fabricated rumours. Famous people, just famous individuals from one place or another, that kind of affect the general image of that place. But in part, is there an element of that? I mean, obviously it's a genetic thing, so obviously there's going to be little pockets of more autism here, more ADHD over there. It's just there are areas where more people have red hair or blue eyes or anything else. I don't know. Is it a possibility? Certainly autism has existed for thousands of years. I mean, there's a theory it's actually an evolutionary advantage to have autistic people in a society because, we sort of specialise in things. Yeah, I mean, that manifests itself now as, the special interest or phobias or being sensory seeking. But, those things, back in the Stone Age might have been an advantage. If you became extremely good at hunting a particular kind of food, that would be good for your tribe, and clearly it exists all over the world. There may be lower rates of diagnosis amongst some people, or in some countries. It exists, so it must exist everywhere. It must have always existed. In one country there are maybe 0.0003% of the population are autistic. There's still autistic people there, It's still present in the population. Well, let me know your thoughts. I'm always interested to know people's opinions on these things. Do you have any experience of the intersection of autism and race? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you later.